Okay, so we're looking at political parties. And remember what a political party means. It just means that you have a group of like-minded people who are going to eventually try to seek control of some sort of government, whether it's the legislative branch or the executive branch. They're going to try to gain office by competing in an election. And we have three parts that we've talked about. Party and the electorate, those are the voters. That's the majority of the political party. Next, you're going to have parties organization, people who are working on campaigns, volunteering. They're politically active, but they're trying to influence the campaign. And then you have people who actually run and win. They're considered party in government. So those are the three parts that you can think of. The biggest one of these groups would be the party in the electorate. What do? Well, one, they're a linkage institution. They're channeling people's concerns all the way to the government. So they're one of those linkage institutions. They're translating inputs into or from the public into the policy makers. And one way they do this is parties will pick the candidates. They run campaigns. They give cues to voters. Let's go back a little bit. When they pick candidates, that's called a nomination. You win your party's endorsement. You've won the primary. You're now that party's nominee. For example, Mitt Romney, during the primary election, he's running against other Republicans. He beat them. Then he was at the convention, and he earned the Republican Party's nomination to be the Republican nominee for President of the United States. Then he was campaigning against Barack Obama, a Democrat. So one way they are a linkage institution is they help pick the policy makers. They give out the nomination. Then they'll actually help them campaign. They'll coordinate the campaign, spend money, use technology, whatever, help the candidates win. Then they give cues to voters. Even though the party ties have weakened, most voters still have a party image, and they believe in the Republicans or they believe in the Democrats. And so those parties give cues or clues to those voters about what agenda to support. And then parties will also help coordinate and articulate policies themselves. Okay, so here's our spectrum. We see extremely liberal all one end, all the way to the right we see extremely conservative. Very few people are there. Most people are near the moderate level, maybe slightly liberal, maybe slightly conservative, but this is kind of the bell curve that we see, the typical. And this brings us to rational choice theory, Anthony Downs' idea that we're going to assume parties and political actors, including voters, are going to act in a way that helps them achieve their goals. So ideology is important, but it's not nearly as important as winning elections because you don't get to govern unless you win elections. So if you're campaigning, even though maybe a politician is a 2 or a 1, he's going to campaign closer to a 4 because he wants to win all these, right? So this is why the perception of the Democratic Party would be somewhere right here is because they want to win maybe 4s all the way over. That's going to give you the election, especially during a general election. Now, a primary, only the 1 shows up, right? The extremists, the people who care about this a lot. So you may want to campaign during a primary as a 1 or a 2 somewhere over here, because these are the diehards. These are the people that are voting in a primary election. In a general election, you need to campaign over at a 4. That's rational choice. Ticket splitting, this is on the rise. We see that people are willing to vote for different parties for different offices at the same year. So on the ballot, you may vote for President Obama for president, but then a Republican senator or a Republican governor. People are willing to ticket split. Typically, in the past, that didn't really happen. People were doing straight ticket voting. When we're talking about party as an organization, these are the people that are working for the party. They're helping the local parties as a party machine win elections. They're giving organization on the ground that is helping win votes and eventually govern at the local level. So this is party as an organization. In the past, this process relied on the patronage system, giving out jobs or promotions or contracts for political reasons rather than merit, and these party machines would use this in order to gain local influence. They would hire only people who were supporting them in the past. Now this doesn't happen, and as a result, maybe the local organizations are generally weak. So let's talk about primaries and the different types that we have. We see what a closed primary is. Voters have to register in advance and can only vote for that party. So you walk up to the voting booth, you say, I'd like to vote in their party in the primary, and they're going to say, okay, which party are you for? And you'll say one of them, and you'll get a ballot that only has that party's primary candidates on that list. So that's a closed primary. It's closed to the other side. Think of it like that. Open primaries, you get to walk up there. You get to pick whichever ballot you want. You don't have to be registered in advance with that party. You can vote for either party, right? But you're still going to get a ballot with one person's or one political party's list of nominees. Okay, so the difference here between these two is the in advance part. If you have had to register in advance of election day with a political party to get their ballot, that's a closed primary. Open primary, you walk up there that day, you pick whichever one you want, then you vote. Blanket primaries are a little bit different. You get a list of everybody, Republicans and Democrats, and you can only vote for one name. So it's not going to be as clear, that Republicans favor Mitt Romney. Well, no, you could have voted for President Obama, or you could have even Democrats voting in the Republican primary and just trying to tank the thing, voting for the person they think is weakest because they want to win the general election. So that's a possibility in these blanket primaries. Not a lot of states use these. The National Convention, so after the primary stage, they're going to have a convention, a big party every 4 years so that they can choose the presidential nominee. And in the background, they're also going to work on the party platform, that policy agenda that they want to accomplish over the next 4 years. And all of this is put on by the National Committee, the institution that keeps the party running and operates the conventions themselves. And they're usually headed up by a chairperson, someone who's responsible for day-to-day activities of the party. That's their job, is to run that national committee and make sure that everything goes smooth and help get their candidates elected once they've won primaries. Party in government. These are party members who are actually governing. They're not candidates anymore. They're actually in government. But while they are candidates, they're actually less dependent on parties than they used to be. Candidates have their own website. They have their own staff. They don't have to ask for a lot of help from the Democratic National Committee or the Republican National Committee. They're kind of self-sufficient. And so they don't owe the political parties a whole lot. But once they win, these individuals will form into coalitions, usually by their political party. And this is a group of individuals that have common interests. They're going to form kind of a block that is going to give them the majority in power, and they organize together. Let's keep going. The Republican platform in 2000, Bush set the stage for today's prosperity. The party of peace through strength, personal saving accounts are the cornerstone. The idea of privatizing Social Security there. Those are the kind of ideas of 2000. Now, the Democratic one said, hey, Clinton was responsible for prosperity, and they reversed the decline in defense spending, and they wanted to create privately managed savings accounts. So we're going to keep going past the platforms. Let's talk about party errors real quick. Historical periods in which a majority of voters cling to a specific party and keep them in power for multiple elections for an extended period of time. Okay, so 1896 through 1932, that was a Republican era. The national politics were kind of dominated by Republicans. Now, I mean, there are exceptions to that, but you would just kind of say that's a Republican era. Now, 1932 is a critical election. We see a switch there. We see party realignment happening where the minority party, the Democrats, become the majority, and they stay in power all the way through the late 60s. So that would be a critical election, 1932. You see a switch. You see the majority and the minority parties switching, and you see party realignment. So this is an electoral earthquake. Usually there's a big issue or a big event or maybe a new coalition that emerges and changes things up. So in 1932, the big shift would be the Great Depression. The Republicans taking a lot of blame for a bad economy, and as a result, America puts their faith in the Democratic Party for the next 30 years. Critical elections are critical because you see party realignment. You see the change of the majority party to the minority party, and the minority party formerly is now the majority party. All right, so let's fly through this. 1796 through 1824, you see factions starting to develop. The first political parties, you guys know that the first party were the Federalists, the other one would be the Anti-Federalists, right? And this was around the ratification of the Constitution. Then we get to 1828, where we see Jackson for the first time, and these Democrats having a modern political party, fighting off the Whigs. The Whigs really didn't have a very strong agenda. They mostly just were opposing the Democrats. And then you see two Republican eras, starting with Lincoln, going all the way through Hoover. Really, now there were Democrats who were elected, but there was a big, it was a big time period of Republican dominance. Then you have the New Deal coalition, where Democrats are in charge. They relied upon urbanites, minorities, Catholics and Jews, the poor, and then Southerners as well. So you can see the growth of why the Democrats would rely on those people, because you see their size, right? White evangelicals obviously vote Republican. There's a huge disadvantage, or a huge discrepancy there in white evangelicals. Now, present, you see divided parties. So right now we see back and forth. We see party de-alignment. People are not as attached to political parties as they once were. And they're kind of neutral on them. And so you see a Republican here, right? You go Nixon to Carter, and then you have Reagan and Bush, but then it switches to Clinton, and then George W. Bush, and now back to President Obama. So you see switching back and forth, party de-alignment. We don't have a dominant party right now. And this also happens at the state level. So you see some Republican control, you see some Democratic control, you see the two parties are splitting the houses in a lot of states across the country. Political parties other than Democrat or Republican, they don't win elections because we have a winner-take-all system. You have to win a plurality of the vote, and the losers get zero. So in other countries, like Great Britain, where if you vote for a third party, say the third party gets 10% of the vote, well, they're going to get 10% of the seats in Congress. So other systems have proportional allocation of seats. You win the number of seats based on the percent of vote you get. That's the way other countries do it. We don't. We have districts, and inside those districts, whoever gets the plurality takes everything. And on the presidential level, the states work that way as well, right? Winner take all. And so that discourages third parties because they never get the plurality, and you can't really build on any confidence through time because you're never winning. What they do is bring new groups and people and ideas into policies, right? Into politics. Some good things maybe about the two-party system is that it discourages extreme views. We don't have anyone on the edge because you have that rational choice theory, right? Anthony Down. Remember, if you're going to be successful during your campaign, you're going to campaign around that moderate level because you're going to win the moderates plus all your extremes, right? So you want to be around 4 if you're a liberal, campaign there because you're going to win the 1s, 2s, and 3s because they're not going to vote for a conservative. But then you win the 4s as well. So you get that plurality. Because we got the winner-take-all system. Seats are awarded only to first place. You contrast that with proportional representation like other countries, Great Britain, Germany, a lot of European nations, where you win the number of seats based on the votes that you get. Right? So more votes, more seats. Ours doesn't work that way. Unless you get first, you don't get anything. So political parties, they have distinct comprehensive programs. This would be their platform. They try to attract candidates and help those candidates win so they get into government and can accomplish the things that they want to do. Majority party must carry out its program, and they accept responsibility for things that happen, whether they're controllable or not. It's easier to pass the buck than to bite the bullet. We see that there's gridlock, and really Madison and those other founding fathers really established gridlock. We do not see uniformity even within parties. People will vote their constituents the way their constituents want, even if that's not the way the party wants them to vote. So you see some of that. You see some breaks. The parties are not as strong as they used to be. These are all true things. We see this lack of uniformity. It's going to keep our government small. It's going to make things harder to do, including cutting government programs, because people get helped by those programs and they want to keep them. So is the party over? Well, no, because we still get information from them. They still help candidates get elected. So there's still some reasons that the political parties exist, even though we're more attracted to the candidates necessarily than their political beliefs and the policies they support. So state and national party organizations are getting stronger, even though that local party and those party machines have been busted up because we no longer use the patronage system. We are merit-based. People identify with the party, all right, but they're willing to split their ticket, and parties will continue to be around.